a little bit of my thoughts on bows and crossbows, but as it would relate to ease of use, and I think this actually has more value to more people because we can directly relate that to things like Glocks, ARs, and such. So I shot 2 arrows from my bow here. Now let's go take a look at what that looked like. And this is not staged. These just aren't real good. So here's my shooting block, 31-inch arrows. And I shot it from right over there. So not an incredibly long shot, but I'll show you what the distance looks like right about here. Fired right about there. Now what's interesting about this is that's not very far, okay? And I would like to have the conversation about, does simplicity or ease of use play that big of a role, or should it play that big of a role when we are selecting a weapon system? Now, these are weapon systems, right? From an age gone past. These are both modernized versions of their predecessors. Yes, this one is obviously going to have a better chance at accuracy. It has a red dot. The red dot does work. And the bow has no sighting system at all. But both of these are modernized, hunting-oriented weapon systems. 35-pound bow. With my draw length, you're probably talking about 50-plus bow weight. And then this crossbow here is 150 pounds. And I think it's interesting because we can sometimes get so wrapped up in our personal preferences, like 45, 1911, that we forget the ultimate rule is it has to work. We have to be capable of accurate and effective shots. Sometimes speed might be a factor. It's not always just about which item you would rather. Sometimes other factors come into play. Another factor that comes into play with something like these is this bow here. You hold it vertically, whereas the bow system here, when you're holding it as a rifle, right, it actually makes you wider horizontally. So this bow is much larger in all aspects, but it's also much lighter. That plays a factor. So if I had to walk very far, that is much easier to walk further with. But as we're getting ready to find out, this is much easier to be accurate with. So if my goal is to take one arrow or bolt and hit a target, maybe a deer, which one would be easier to do that with? Let's talk for a second after I put a couple bolts on target. All right, so I think it's at least worth noting that I have spent, probably 50 hours at least shooting that bow that I just showed you guys. So at least 50 is probably a really good estimate, because usually what I've been doing recently is I'll go run, and then I'll go, after I finish running in this park that I like going to, I'll then shoot a bow for a while. I'll take my target with me, put it in the trunk. Nobody really gets upset. So let's say 50 hours of practice time on that bow, and I just showed you that the shot placement's not very good, to be honest, right? And this is not a far distance at all. It's not a moving target. And the crossbow I just acquired. This used to belong to my uncle. He has since passed away. And this was given to me by my aunt for my birthday. So I have, I think, 12 shots total on this crossbow. And we're gonna see how much faster I can hit, or how much more accurate, not really faster, how much more accurate I can hit with this system. And again, to be fair, yes, it has a red dot. It will be turned on. But let's find out. You know, sometimes certain weapon systems are just more capable than others. I can draw this back by hand. I really like that. It is a 150-pound crossbow. Stand by. That's all that took. I love it. It's got like a tray that everything sits in. Let's see what happens here. Well, we definitely hit the target. Let's do one more, and then we'll go and compare. How about that? Now, I can honestly tell you, that was not my best shot. but we'll go see in a minute. All right, let's go take a look. Let's see what we got here. Woo! All right, so I saw this one impact. This was the first shot, this top left. And then I took a little bit more effort aiming because I think that was trigger pull. That was me, not the system. And I took my time with this shot here. You probably even saw that I forgot to disengage the safety. That's how unfamiliar I am with the crossbow. I'm just not as fluid with the whole system, but look at the difference in shots, guys. Yeah, neither of these had any warm up. I didn't do any shots prior to these arrows or prior to these bolts. Look how much easier that was to hit with. I feel confident that at this distance, I could incapacitate a deer. And again, this is not a long way, so I'm not saying I'm very competent with the crossbow, but I was aiming here this second shot and I hit there. That's a very different level of accuracy. Yeah, so I think it's pretty obvious why the crossbow, if I was gonna actually go out hunting, would be a more effective system. But stand by, we're gonna talk a little further. It crosses my mind a lot when I go meet different people, or anytime you go to the shooting range or a gun store, really anywhere where people that own guns would frequent, there's always conversation, usually between the salesman and the potential customer, right? Dealing with calibers and weapon selection. And more often than not, people talk about, hey, go with what feels good. I hear this so much anytime I go in the gun store. The guy on the counter will talk about, he'll hand them a gun and be like, yeah, just what feels good to you. Now, I can honestly tell you, that ain't what works for me. Maybe it works for you, but more often what I have to do is a little more involved based on what I know. So I gotta try the trigger out a little bit, I gotta dry fire, I wanna come to high center chest to press out a few times to see, do my eyes pick up the sights within a reasonable time frame? What does that look like? And by now, I'm very preferential towards a Glock because that's what I've used for years. Used it as a cop, carried it before and after as a cop, or before and after being a cop, so I'm just familiar. But what really matters, and the part that you cannot go and test when you're just standing in the gun store, is can you hit with the item? Now, to some extent, that comes down to training, right? But like I just told you a moment ago, I've spent probably 50 hours with that bow, and I'm still not as competent as I am with that crossbow, and I just got it. I don't even have an hour of total practice time with that crossbow. And by the way, I've never owned a crossbow prior. So extremely limited exposure. However, everything about it is more intuitive. Everything about it feels more relatable to modern items, right? So I have spent a lot of time shooting a rifle, but I'm willing to bet that I could hand that crossbow to somebody that has not shot a rifle much. As long as I could cock it for them and show them where the safety is and tell them, hey, put that dot on that target, I bet they could hit it. Whereas if I handed somebody that bow, I'm willing to bet more often than not they wouldn't hit anything. That they would overshoot, undershoot, whatever. They would miss the target entirely. And I like history, so this is related in a lot of historical references as well. Why did people start using crossbows instead of bows? They're much more complicated to make in many cases, especially the latter ones. When you started talking about some crossbows that required a windlass system to actually draw, that's extremely complex. Why would they go to that instead of a bow? Well, because you could train somebody on it faster. You could make someone lethal faster. And yes, in some cases, like with that windlass crossbow, you could put significantly more tension on the bow and you could penetrate items more, like armor. Yeah, all of that's relevant. But guys, back before those incredible weights requiring a windlass, you were talking about fairly simple crossbows, but they still were easier to use. You could train somebody faster on a crossbow than you could on a bow. It's just the way it is. And then once guns came on the scenes, then you had a similar transition where, again, because of armor penetration and your ability to train an average guy in a reasonable amount of time how to be proficient, it didn't take years to be capable of stopping a threat with a firearm as compared to it did take years to do the same task with a bow. So I think it's worth noting for our own modern references, we need to apply some of those lessons learned to ourselves. If you just really love an AK, I'll be honest, I really like AKs. I think there's something just fun about them. I think there's something really kind of sexy about it. But guys, I can't hit as well with an AK. Some of that is me, some of it is the system. I also have a significant amount of time with AKs and ARs over the course of years. And what I've found is the AK is just not as capable of being accurate as the AR, by and large. So if that's the case, I then have to ask, if I was picking one or the other, what would be my reasons for picking the AK over the AR? Some people jump on reliability, maybe. Some people jump on the punch that's going to be behind a 7.62 round, the mass of that round being different. Maybe. Some of it might be that it gets through brush better, like the round itself penetrates brush better. That would be true. I've witnessed that with my own eyes. Yes, all of that is true, but does all of that outweigh the positives, the pros of an AR? Or let's bring it back to a handgun, right? If you're someone who really likes a .357 revolver, are you as good? Can you hit a target as consistently with that as you can, let's say, a 9mm SIG or Glock or whatever the case is? Can you? Probably not. Is it possible? Yes. But most people, the answer will be no. One of them is just inherently easier to shoot. And there has to be a balance in there somewhere. What item do you pick that will do the task of stopping threats? And then can you compare that over to your capability with the item? Because if you take a Magnum round, it's definitely going to hit hard, for sure. But I have to hit it. I have to hit with it. So it doesn't matter how capable the round is if I personally cannot hit a target consistently with that item. It's great that a 50 BMG can decimate a target at 1,000 meters. I probably can't, though. I probably can't make that happen. And then another thing you have to factor, right, is cost, because nobody really that I talk to is loaded with money. So I then have to ask myself, how much am I going to have to spend to become proficient with said items? I can become proficient with that crossbow today. Today. I could get to a point, if I just decided to, I could set aside 5 hours and do enough practice with that crossbow to feel good enough to go hunting with it today. I do not feel currently good enough with that bow. I think I would wound the deer, or I think I would miss it entirely. Yeah. It would cost me more money to become proficient with the bow. I'd have to get official training on it. I'd have to go learn a lot more than I currently know. Whereas the crossbow, I could just pick up, go at it. Good enough. Apply that to your life. I think so many people are looking at the wrong thing when they're trying to select life-saving or protection gear. Same thing goes with tourniquets and gauze and such. Guys, it doesn't matter how cool John Doe on the internet thinks an item is. If you can't make it work, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't matter if it works for me. Apply that however you see fit. I hope it helps, and we'll see you later.